Welcome to Your Deep Dive. Today we'll be exploring excerpts from How to Overcome the World.
Okay.
It's a Christian study guide that you shared with us.
Okay.
And it's all about how Christians can live in a world
Right.
that doesn't always mesh with their beliefs.
Yeah.
A topic that I think we can all relate to in some way.
Absolutely. This guide tackles some really big questions,
Yeah.
like dealing with persecution and temptation.
Right.
But it also offers this unique perspective on how to find strength and live a meaningful life amidst all these challenges.
Okay, so the guy jumps right in by defining the world.
Yeah.
And it's not talking about planet Earth.
Right.
It's more about the values and the systems that go against what Christians believe in. It's like that pressure you feel sometimes to chase success
Yeah.
or fit in, even if it means compromising your values.
Right.
Have you ever felt that kind of pull?
I think we've all felt that tension at some point.
Yeah.
That feeling of being caught between what the world expects of us and what we truly believe.
Right.
And the guide suggests that this conflict is actually a spiritual battle
Whoa.
with the devil influencing those worldly values.
That's intense.
Oh.
It definitely adds a whole new layer to the idea of overcoming the world.
Right.
It makes you think about how much of our choices are truly our own and how much might be influenced by external forces.
Exactly. It raises those age-old questions about free will versus destiny.
Right.
And it really sets the stage for understanding the challenges that the guide goes on to describe, like persecution.
Right. The guy acknowledges that being a Christian sometimes means facing hardship,
Yeah.
maybe even from people you love.
Yeah.
It talks about unkind words, threats, even physical harm.
It's true.
That can be a heavy burden to carry.
It can be incredibly isolating,
Yeah.
feeling like you're misunderstood or even judged for your beliefs.
Right.
The guide doesn't sugarcoat that reality, but it does offer a source of strength by reminding Christians that even Jesus experienced persecution. It even quotes Matthew 5:10, which calls those who are persecuted for righteousness blessed.
So it's almost like finding strength through shared experience.
Yes.
Like if Jesus faced these challenges, then maybe there's something powerful in enduring them.
Absolutely. It's about finding comfort in knowing that you're not alone in your struggles.
Okay.
And the guide takes this idea even further by talking about heaven as the true home for Christians.
Okay.
It mentions that verse from Philippians 3:2e,
Right.
the one about our citizenship being in heaven,
Yeah.
implying that this life on earth is just a temporary stop.
So if Earth is temporary, how should a Christian approach it?
The guide suggests that it's all about expressing God's love,
Okay.
even to those who might be against him.
Okay.
And it gets really specific about how to put that love into action, particularly within families and workplaces.
Okay. So let's dive into some of those specifics.
Sure.
The guide uses that verse from Ephesians about husbands loving their wives as their own bodies.
Right.
It also talks about wives submitting to their husbands, children obeying their parents, and employees working diligently.
Yeah.
It's interesting how these examples are presented without much context or nuance.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
And it really highlights the guide's purpose. It's not necessarily trying to spark a debate about complex social issues,
Right.
but rather to offer clear, actionable advice
Yeah.
for living in accordance with Christian teachings.
It's like a roadmap for navigating daily life, but maybe with a few detours that need further exploration.
Exactly. It's important to remember that these teachings were written in a specific time and context, and it's up to each individual to interpret and apply them in a way that makes sense for their own lives.
Yeah.
That's the important part, I think.
Yeah, for sure. It's fascinating how this guide, while grounded in a specific religious context, still touches on themes that resonate with so many people, regardless of their beliefs.
Right.
I mean, who hasn't felt that pressure to conform or compromise their values?
Exactly. And I think that's where this concept of overcoming the world becomes really powerful. It's not just about avoiding certain behaviors or following a set of rules.
Right.
It's about developing a deep understanding of yourself and your values.
Okay.
So you can navigate those challenges with intention and purpose.
So it's like building that inner compass that guides you,
Precisely.
regardless of external pressures.
And the guide emphasizes that this is an ongoing process, constantly learning and evolving.
Right.
And what might have been a challenge or temptation yesterday might look completely different tomorrow.
It's like that idea that personal growth is a journey, not a destination.
Yeah.
And speaking of journeys,
Right.
the guide also talks about dealing with those inevitable moments when we face opposition or criticism for our beliefs. It even suggests that there's a certain strength to be found in enduring those hardships.
It's interesting how the guide presents those experiences as opportunities for growth,
Okay.
almost like a refining fire.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds us that even in those difficult moments,
Yeah.
there's a chance to learn and deepen our understanding of ourselves and our beliefs.
But there's a fine line between enduring hardship and accepting mistreatment,
Mm.
right?
Absolutely. And I think that's where discernment and self-awareness come into play.
Okay.
It's about recognizing your own boundaries
Right.
and knowing when to stand up for yourself or for others.
So overcoming the world isn't about becoming passive or accepting injustice. It's more about developing the wisdom to know when to endure and when to push back.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that the guide was written in a specific historical context where persecution of Christians was very real and often brutal.
Right.
Today, the forms of persecution might be different, more subtle,
Right.
but the impacts can be just as profound.
It's like learning to recognize those subtle pressures
Yeah.
and navigate them in a way that honors both your beliefs and your well-being.
Yes, and that takes courage. It takes a willingness to stand up for what you believe in, even when it's uncomfortable or unpopular.
The guide also dives into the topic of temptation.
Okay.
It actually lists some specific temptations, like the lust of the eyes and boasting. It makes you wonder, are these temptations unique to Christians?
Right.
Or do we all grapple with those same desires, regardless of our beliefs?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to the universality of human experience.
Right. Yeah.
We all have desires.
Right.
And sometimes those desires can lead us down paths that might not align with our values.
So it's not about denying our humanity or suppressing all desires.
No.
It's more about figuring out which desires lead to genuine fulfillment.
Right.
And which ones might lead us astray.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that requires some serious self-reflection. It's about being honest with ourselves about what truly matters and making conscious choices that align with our values.
It's like that saying, don't let your emotions run your life.
Right.
We have to be in the driver's seat,
Yeah.
making intentional choices rather than reacting impulsively to our desires.
And the guide reminds us that we don't have to navigate this journey alone.
Okay.
Whether it's through faith community or personal reflection,
Right.
we can find strength and support to face those challenges and make choices that align with our deepest values.
Speaking of support, the guide also emphasizes the importance of expressing God's love through actions, particularly within families.
Yeah.
And it offers some pretty specific examples, like wives submitting to their husbands and children obeying their parents.
Right.
It's interesting how these teachings can be interpreted in so many ways.
Yeah.
And some might find them problematic in today's world.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
It's crucial to approach these teachings with a critical eye and to consider how they might be applied in a modern context
Right.
where societal norms have shifted considerably.
It's like that saying, context is everything.
Right.
We can't just take these teachings at face value without considering the historical and cultural factors that shape them.
And I think that applies to all religious texts.
Right.
It's about engaging with them thoughtfully, asking questions, and interpreting them in a way that resonates with our own experiences and values.
It's like having a conversation with the text.
Yes.
Not just blindly accepting everything it says,
Right.
but really wrestling with the ideas
Right.
and figuring out what they mean for you personally.
Exactly. And that process of wrestling with ideas, of challenging our assumptions and exploring different perspectives,
Right.
that's where the real growth happens.
It's like that saying, the unexamined life is not worth living.
Right.
We have to be willing to question, to explore,
Yeah.
to delve deeper into ourselves and the world around us.
And that exploration, that willingness to engage with difficult questions and challenge our own beliefs, that's what ultimately leads to greater understanding and wisdom.
So overcoming the world, in a sense, is about embracing that journey of self-discovery
Yes.
and continuous growth.
Beautifully said.
It's not about conquering some external force,
Right.
but about cultivating inner strength resilience
Yes.
and a set of guiding principles that help us navigate the complexities of life with purpose and grace.
It's been fascinating exploring these ideas.
It has.
And I'm sure our listener has gained some valuable insights as well.
I hope so.
Before we wrap up, I have one more thought.
Okay.
The text focuses a lot on resisting temptations from the world. But it seems like those temptations are often rooted in very human desires
Okay.
for pleasure, status, or security.
Right.
How do we reconcile those desires with the call to resist the world's influence?
That's a brilliant question.
Yeah.
And it gets right to the heart of the matter.
Mm.
I don't think it's about denying our humanity or suppressing all desires.
Right.
It's more about discerning which desires lead to genuine fulfillment
Yes.
and which ones might lead us astray.
Right.
So it's about being mindful of the motivations behind our actions.
Yeah.
Are we pursuing something that truly aligns with our values? Or are we just chasing fleeting gratification?
It sounds like it all comes back to that idea of self-awareness we were talking about.
Yeah.
It's about taking a step back
Right.
and asking ourselves, why am I drawn to this? What need or desire is driving me?
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that those needs and desires can evolve as we grow and change.
Right.
What might have seemed incredibly tempting or fulfilling at one point in our lives
Yeah.
might lose its appeal as we gain wisdom and experience.
It's like realizing that those shiny objects that used to catch our eye
Yeah.
no longer hold the same allure.
Right.
We start to value different things, seek deeper meaning and connection.
And that process of shifting values and priorities can be uncomfortable.
It might mean letting go of old habits, confronting our own limitations, and challenging the societal pressures that shape our desires.
So it's not always easy, but it sounds like that's where the real growth happens. That's how we truly overcome the world.
Yes. It's about becoming more aligned with our authentic selves.
Right.
More intentional about how we live and interact with the world.
This has been such an insightful exploration,
It has.
and I really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us.
It's been my pleasure.
As we wrap up our deep dive, I'm
Okay.
curious, what's one thing you hope our listener takes away from this conversation?
I would say this. Overcoming the world is not about winning a battle or rejecting everything that doesn't fit into a neat little box.
Right.
It's about embarking on a lifelong journey of self-discovery, growth, and connection.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating the courage to face our fears, the compassion to embrace our shared humanity, and the wisdom to make choices that align with our deepest values.
That's beautifully said, and I think it perfectly captures the essence of this deep dive.
Yeah,
We've explored a lot of complex ideas today,
we have.
from the nature of temptation to the challenges of living in a world that doesn't always reflect our values.
It's true.
And while the guide we've been discussing offers a specifically Christian perspective, I believe there's something universally relatable in its message of seeking deeper meaning, cultivating inner strength, and embracing the journey of personal growth.
I agree.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, and we hope it sparked some new insights and inspired you to continue exploring these ideas in your own life.